What's up, guys? Welcome to the Second Take. I'm Zach.
I'm Jonah.
And we want to welcome you to our 8th podcast that we are bringing you this week. It's 2 months already. Can you believe it?
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. This little experiment has gone pretty far.
Yeah, it's been pretty fun. Not bad. We just want to say thanks to everyone who's listening and continues to listen. And please share the podcast with anyone who will listen to you. And we appreciate it. So, for the weekend review, we just moved on to the second round of the NBA and NHL playoffs. Wrapped up a crazy NFL draft with lots of trades and lots of controversial picks and players. D. Gordon, last year's National League batting champion, was just suspended by the MLB for performance-enhancing drugs, so that's been pretty interesting. Leicester City, the team with a 5,000 to 1 chance of winning the Barclays Premier League, is 2 points away, or a Chelsea victory tonight, from winning that Premier League. LeBron James has reportedly been set to star in Space Jam 2, which I'm pretty excited about. I know Jonah's probably not as excited as I am. And on a more patriotic note, we are celebrating the 5th anniversary of the death of Osama bin Laden, which was, for sports fans, which was seen pretty much solely at the Mets-Phillies game 5 years ago, where the chants of USA broke out and could be heard everywhere. Players wanted to know what was going on, and if you're watching ESPN, that's where you found out the news. So, a solid moment in Barack Obama's presidency, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember watching that game and hearing about it.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. Sports always has a way of connecting something.
Yeah, exactly.
So
right, every story, there's always some kind of sports thing that goes along with that story.
Yeah. That's always what makes me remember what I was doing and where I was. Alright, so we're going to start this week's show with the NFL draft. So since it just wrapped up, we were going to talk about who we thought had the best draft and the worst draft, but more importantly, we need to get into our two teams. So I'm going to let Jonah go first and talk about his Cowboys a little bit, and if you liked the draft, if you didn't, what he thinks, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, in talking about the Cowboys draft, I think, I'm going to focus the most on their first two picks. With the fourth pick they took, I have Ohio State Ezekiel Elliott, the top running back in the draft by everybody's accounts. He's a great football player. Before the draft, I was hoping we didn't take him because running back wasn't a need position. You generally don't want to take running backs that high, but I'd like to announce I've officially talked myself into the pick. There's definitely a downside to taking a running back that early, but apparently he's about the short thing of a running back that you're going to get. He's an every down back because he can catch passes in the backfield. He's the best pass blocking running back that's come out of college in a long time. So he's going to become Tony Romo's best friend over the season. I'm looking forward to seeing him in a Cowboys uniform for a long time. Second round, we went very surprisingly with Jalen Smith, who's linebacker at Notre Dame. He would have been the number one player on the ESPN big board, probably, and a lot of other people's big boards. But in the last Notre Dame season, he tore his ACL and his MCL, and will probably miss this entire season because of nerve damage in his knee. So it's like a flashy pick, but at the same time, kind of an upside type of pick, which is kind of unusual for the Jerry Jones regime. But I mean, I don't mind it because if that nerve does regenerate his knee, then we might have just gotten the best player in the entire draft. And if not, I feel like it was probably a risk worth taking for somebody that talented.
Yeah, so I think that your draft was solid. I mean, I think Ezekiel Elliott is probably he's a top 3 player in this draft. You could easily argue he's the best player in this draft, so that's going to be pretty solid for you guys. Tony Romo is going to need some help, and Ezekiel Elliott's going to provide it. When you guys were your best, you had DeMarco Murray as the leading rusher in the NFL, and all the pressure came off Tony Romo, and he could just make the plays that he can easily make instead of having to always create something. So Ezekiel Elliott's going to bring that, probably be even better than DeMarco Murray in my case. He might even make a case for the rushing title this year. I wouldn't be surprised to see that. More on Jalen Smith. As of right now, he can't even walk without tripping, so when he walks, his toes don't lift up because the nerve in his knee that's damaged cannot lift his foot. So basically, he just walks and his toes hit the ground and he would just fall. So he's using like a pressurized boot that keeps his foot up in order to walk right now. So there's no way of telling when a nerve can regenerate, if it will regenerate, if it won't. Like you have a 0 chance of predicting what's going to happen with him. If something good happens to him, the Cowboys just ran away with this draft because, in my opinion, they could have the 2 best players in the draft as their first and second round picks. One thing I think was a little weird is that they gambled on Jalen Smith ahead of Miles Jack.
Right. I was about to talk about that just because, like, if you're going to take the gamble on a guy that might be injured but has dropped because of injury stuff, but is simultaneously one of the most talented linebackers in the draft. Like,
right.
You have Miles Jack sitting in front of you who, I mean, there's a talk he might need microfracture surgery, but Dr. James Andrews told him personally and publicly that he won't need microfracture surgery. And like, I don't know if his ceiling is as high as Jalen Smith, but like, the floor for Jalen Smith is he never plays a snap in the NFL.
Yeah.
And the floor for Miles Jack is he plays 4 great seasons and then has to retire, you know?
Yeah.
So I probably would have picked Miles Jack if I was going for that kind of upside play. Then that's probably the move I would have made. But you know, I'm not complaining about the Jalen Smith pick. I just would have liked to see a guy that you could put on the field to help this defense out this season.
Yeah,
because,
absolutely.
I don't know. I mean, these concerns about Miles Jack were super overblown because it's like, well, he might need microfracture in the future. Like, if you're picking in a draft for like 6 years ahead of time, then like
you're not going to be good.
You can't plan that far ahead in the NFL.
Yeah, no way.
Players don't last that long.
Exactly.
So, like, I think all those teams that pass on Miles Jack are going to regret it. That's like all the positives for the Jaguars, which they'll talk about later. But yeah, I mean, as far as the Cowboys go, just to close that, we did make a couple of picks for the defensive line, which we sorely needed help on in rounds 3 and 4, Emily Collins and Charles Tapper. So I'm pretty happy with the Cowboys draft. I could be happier, but I like what they've done.
Yeah, and to finish with you guys, you and I both like Rico Gathers just to take a shot. Why not? He's athletic. He's a freak. Jimmy Graham's worked out. Antonio Gates has worked out. Gonzalez has worked out. So why not? Try a basketball player out and see what happens. I think Charles Tapper was a steal in round 4. I liked him in college a lot.
Yeah, I think he's really good.
And
he's a motivated dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He slid a little bit, so he's going to be playing with a chip on his shoulder. And I like Dak Prescott a lot to sit behind Romo, hopefully for a couple of years and learn the system and learn what it's like to be an NFL quarterback. And I think he can be a stud for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, he has all the tools that you need. Like, he has a strong arm. He's pretty accurate. The problem has been his decision making. Like, he will often make throws that are kind of iffy, but that's the kind of thing that's like very teachable, especially if you have a couple of years to learn behind a guy like Tony Romo.
Yep.
When he stays healthy, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah, so I mean, I think you guys missed on a couple of picks, but I also think you hit pretty highly on a couple of picks. So all in all, solid draft.
I give it a B+.
Yeah, somewhere in the B range for sure.
Yeah.
I'd be happy with it. It's nothing you're going to have a fit over, so that's good. So then we'll move to the crosstown rival that's not so crosstown, the New York Giants. So if any of you follow our Twitter account, you could see the tweet that Jonah sent saying, showing our messages where I was pretty upset after round 1. Eli Apple was selected at Ohio State. Most teams didn't even have him as the second best corner, let alone the first best corner, and he was the first taken. So that was a little strange.
Although you did like him more than I did.
Yes, and I'm growing into him just a little bit by the day. But Jack Conklin and Leonard Floyd were the 2 highest on our boards, and the Bears and the Titans moved into the 8 and 9 spot in order to take those 2 players. So I think it frazzled our management a little bit, which is pretty upsetting to say. Shocker. And we selected Eli Apple, who, quote, was the third highest player on our board that had no issues. So, as you know, Laramie Tunsil and Miles Jack were there. I really would have liked one of those guys because we need both those positions, but they have issues according to the Giants, so they were pretty much not even on our board. That's going to come back to bite us, I'm sure, but Eli Apple does fit a position of need. It was a reach, yes, but I hope he can develop a little bit. Can sit behind Jenkins and DRC for a little while, hopefully. We still don't have a slot corner because all three of these guys are essentially number one corners. So that's going to be interesting to see who moves into the slot. But I love our round 2 pick with Sterling Shepard. I think putting him with Odell is going to create a lot of problems for a lot of people. I think our offense was one of the top 5 offenses last year, and it just got better with that pick. So I'm pretty excited about that. Even if Victor Cruz isn't 100%, Sterling Shepard can fill that role pretty nicely. Darian Thompson was our 3rd round pick. He's a ball-hawking safety from Boise State with 19 interceptions in his college career, so I like that a lot. And then we also got a linebacker from Clemson that I'm not crazy high on, but I like him enough that I think he can fit a role for us. So, I mean, a lot of people think the Giants had a pretty solid draft. I think they missed on the first round and could have gotten someone better, but I still like the draft.
Yeah, I like the Giants draft overall. I didn't like picking Apple. I wasn't even as high on him as you were in your question to pick. Like, I think he definitely has a lot of work to do. He's a good cover guy because he's super athletic, but he's not really much of a playmaking corner right now.
Yeah, and he has a big tendency to grab and just get a lot of penalties called, so that's going to be a problem.
Right, he kind of reminds me a little bit of Brandon Browner in that way.
Yeah.
Which obviously wouldn't be terrible. I mean, obviously Browner was a lot better in Seattle out of it, so it might have been a system product.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I'm okay with picking a corner because you were pretty thin at corner after your top 2.
Yeah, I mean, we really didn't even have a 3rd corner, so now we have one.
Right. But I like Hargraves better. I like William Jackson better.
Yeah.
So
I think it was more of an upside pick than anything. I think they're just hoping. I mean, Eli Apple's he's only 3 years out of high school. I mean, he was a redshirt sophomore, right. I think, or he went to prep school and then was a sophomore, I'm pretty sure, out of Ohio State. So he's young. He's got a lot of room to develop, and hopefully he can. I don't know. Ohio State had a lot of talent, so I'm hoping he just brings what he had and gets better each year, and hopefully it'll develop. But I'm pretty happy with the draft. Same as you. I think it's not great, but it's not bad. It's going to get the job done, and we needed a lot of help in a lot of different spots, and I think we pretty much filled everything except for the offensive line, which I would have liked to see.
Yeah, I mean, I did love the Sterling Shepard pick. We were talking in the last podcast about guys we liked who didn't go in our mock. I talked about Sterling Shepard. Like, I like him a lot. I'm pretty sad that you guys got him because I think he's going to be really tough to cover, especially with the quality of defensive backs that we have, because that's a position you didn't really address in the draft. But yeah, I think overall it was decent. I mean, it was a risky move for the Bucs because they traded down and had the Bears move ahead of them to take Floyd, because the Bears would have move ahead of you if they wanted Floyd.
Right.
And the Bucs figured you wouldn't take a corner so they could get their guy Hargraves at 11. So they kind of lucked out that you didn't pick him. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think it was solid.
Yeah, I don't know. After day 1, I was crushed, but since then I've gotten a little bit better. I like some of the picks, and we'll see what happens. Everyone needs to develop, no matter how good they are. They're not going to be stars yet, so we'll see who puts the work in and who doesn't. But we'll move to the best draft that we think a team had. So I'll go first. I think the Jaguars had the best draft. I was crazy high on what they did. I think they got 2 of the top 5 players in the first 2 rounds with Jalen Ramsey and Miles Jack. Those are 2 guys that are going to be stalwarts of the defense, I think, for some time. And then round 3, a guy I talked about in our last podcast, Yannick Ngakoue out of Maryland. I think he's just going to be so good there, rushing the passer and wrecking havoc, just doing things that are going to really help the team. Sheldon Day, defensive tackle from Notre Dame, a lot of people thought was going to go round 2, ended up in round 4 to the Jags. So I mean, their later rounds weren't as good as some other teams, but I think those first 4 picks were like as good as you could get in those first 4 rounds. So I think that's going to help them a lot, and that's who I have for the best draft.
Yeah, I also like Brandon Allen, the quarterback from Arkansas. They got in the 6th round.
Yep.
I think he's definitely going to be a solid backup quarterback for when Chad Henne moves on. I think he was probably the best quarterback in the SEC last year. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, it's arguable. He was close, for sure. He was close.
Right. So, I mean, I like that pick. He's played against high-level defenses.
He's so big, too. He's got the quarterback body, for sure.
Yeah, so I think that was another good under-the-radar pick. In terms of best draft for me, there's a couple I like. The best draft that I liked overall is the Washington Redskins, our division rivals. I don't know if it's the best draft necessarily, but I liked it a lot in terms of what they did. I loved them getting Josh Doxson, who I thought was the best receiver in the draft.
No, you hated them getting Josh Doxson, and so did I, but it was a great pick.
I loved it from their perspective. I think it was a great pick. They had two receivers I thought were worse, especially Fuller. I like Coleman for the Browns, but I didn't like Will Fuller nearly as much. I think they made a good move to get Doxson at 22. Then they took Stuart Craven in the 2nd round, who is a guy who's kind of in the Mark Barron type mold, I guess.
Yeah.
In the sense that he can play safety and linebacker, which is super valuable in sub packages. Like, it can give you a lot of different looks. Being able to play at 2 levels of the defense, like, is super valuable in terms of flexibility.
Absolutely.
So, I think that was a great pick for the Redskins. And then we both like Kendall Fuller, the corner out of Virginia Tech that they got in the 3rd round. You put him with Josh Farmer. We don't love Josh Farmer, but he's at least good, if not great.
Yeah, I mean, Kendall Fuller's only going to make him better, too.
Right, and so they're building a good secondary there. They're out to prove that they were not a fluke last year, which we'll see about that, but you got to give them credit for giving the guys they had the supporting cast they need to go out and prove that they were as good as they played last year.
Yeah, they drafted a lot of talent, and it's going to come in handy. I like their draft too. That's probably number 2 or 3 in my mind for best drafts. And then briefly,
I did like the Dolphins draft a lot more than you did.
Yeah, you did. The more I look at it, the more I like it, though. It's pretty solid. I mean,
I think it's possible they got the best player in the draft at 13 with Tunsil. Like, I think that the thing that caused him to drop, I won't get into that specifically, but if you're listening to this podcast, you probably know about it. I just think that's not a concern. Like, there was a quote from the GM of the Lions who said, if we cross guys off our board for smoking weed in high school, then
there's no board
to be gone. Right. So, like, I think it was silly to penalize him for that. Dolphins didn't even really have that big of a need at tackle, but
I heard
the best player in the draft at 13. They were like, well, you got to take him.
I heard he's actually going to play guard for the Dolphins, which is pretty shocking.
Yeah, I mean, he's a really good run blocker, so I guess it makes some sense.
I mean, he's the highest rated left tackle, and he's about to play guard, so that says.
I think they're going to keep Brandon Albert at left tackle and then keep Juwan James at right tackle, or are they going to put Bushman at right tackle?
Whatever they want. They actually have a good problem.
Right, it's a really good problem to have. They have like 4 decent tackles, so I personally would have probably kicked inside guard because I just like Tunsil better.
Yes.
But whichever way they put it, they actually have a pretty decent offensive line there.
Yeah.
I don't love the rest of that team, but I think like what they did in this draft.
Yeah, so then one more team I want to talk about just quickly, not going to go deep into it, but the Ravens. Good first round with Ronnie Stanley. They drafted Kid Correa out of Boise State in the 2nd round that I really like, defensive end, and another one out of BYU, Bronson Kafusi, who I think is solid. I saw him play a couple of times. But then I just want to talk about their 4th round. So they had 5 picks in the 4th round, and I know Mel Kiper and Todd McShay are raving about this. They think they got possibly 4 starters out of the 5 picks of their 4th round. They have a really good corner out of Temple, Tavon Young. Chris Moore is a receiver out of Cincy that can stretch the D, which they desperately needed last year. If you watched any of those games, they got Kenneth Dixon, who's probably the third best running back in the draft. So I mean, there's a lot of places they hit. Keenan Reynolds, who I mentioned, they also got in the 6th round. I think he's very good. And then they got a corner out of Virginia in the 6th round, Maurice Kennedy, that was like the 4th or 5th rated corner on some draft boards. So, I mean, there's a lot of talent here, and they hit a lot of it. I think the problem with this draft, or the good thing with this draft, is that there was so much talent, so many places, and so deep in the draft that a lot of teams could have had a really good draft, and it's pretty sad if you didn't, because there were a lot of names you could have gotten to help you out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to have a bad draft. I'll talk about the drafts we like least.
Yeah, so unfortunately with every good draft, there's a bad draft, and there were a couple in this one. And the funny part is, the 2 that we picked were the 2 teams that probably should have had the best draft with the amount of selections they had, and that's the Browns and the Titans. So I'll let Jonah go first and talk about the Titans.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't strictly hate the Titans draft. They got some good players. They had a lot of picks. They stockpiled picks, which is the right strategy for a team like that. I know a lot of analysts like the Titans draft. I didn't think it that much. It moved down to 15 with the Rams originally from the number 1 spot, and then they moved back up to number 8 during the draft and picked Jack Conklin, who will hopefully play right tackle across from Taylor Lewan and trying to protect their franchise quarterback. However, I think they were crazy not to take Laremy Tunsil there. Like, I think that brings them down a lot. Because, like, with the Ravens taking Lonnie Stanley, I didn't mind that much because a lot of people had Stanley over Tunsil on their boards anyway. But, like, in terms of talent, there's no universe in which Conklin is as good a tackle as Tunsil is.
And, I mean, they moved up, and that was the thought. Like, Laremy Tunsil, that's who they're going to pick number 1. He's there at number 8, so let's move up and get him.
I would have loved it if they had done that, but instead they picked someone worse. Now, like, he's the same kind of player as Taylor Lewan, and, like, the goal should have been to push Lewan off of left tackle to right tackle, but Conklin's probably not going to do that. But if you pick Tunsil, then you can slot him right in at left tackle and move Lewan over to right tackle, and you make both positions better. But I'm not really sure they did that here. Then in the 2nd round, they took Derrick Henry, who's last year's Heisman Trophy winner, running back out of Alabama. He's a really good player, but I didn't like the value there simply because they already invested in DeMarco Murray to be their running back. So I didn't love taking a running back there when they had so many other needs.
Yeah, I mean, they had 3 second-round picks. I like Kevin Dodd a little bit. I think he was probably a late first round, so that's not a bad pick. He was kind of a one-year wonder, so we'll see what happens there. I'm pretty high on Austin Johnson, who they drafted as nose tackle out of Penn State, so I like that. But, yeah, Derrick Henry is kind of confusing to me. I think he's a great running back and he's going to be good, but he's about to step in and just be a number 2 guy for a couple of years probably. So I'm a little confused with that one. And then just the amount of picks they have, and you don't read through their picks and just be like, wow, they really hit on this guy, or wow, this was a great pick. You're kind of just like, yeah, he's alright, but maybe, I don't know. So
the exact draft that I thought they needed.
Yeah, so I mean, they did alright, but they should have done better with the stockpiling of picks they had. I feel like it's a team that was pretty bad last year that got a lot of guys that are just above average or average, when there was a lot of names they could have gotten where someone wanted to prove themselves, or where they were just better, flat out better than the people they drafted. So I'm a little confused with that, but I guess it's a lot of depth, and hopefully it works out for them. But I'm with you. I don't love it.
Yeah. So you want to talk about the Browns a little bit?
Yeah. So here's a team that has, I think it was 15, right? 15 draft picks. And
yeah, and a bunch for next year too.
Yeah, and I can legitimately say that I like 2 of them, and that's their 1st round pick and their 6th round pick, or 7th round pick. So I said Scooby Wright was a very good linebacker, like a 3rd round Zach Thomas comparisons. I mean, very good. He was drafted 250 overall, so I like that. I think that's a steal. He has some injury problems, but I think he's going to be fine. So that's a really good pick.
It was 40 times.
It was not good.
It was 48. great.
That's all right. He's a tackling machine. And then.
Yeah, I mean, it's tremendous value for 250.
Yeah, at 250. Yeah, if he's healthy, he's getting picked in the third, fourth round. So that's a good pick.
Sure, yeah.
And then Jonah and I are really high on Corey Coleman. I even said earlier I think he could be like an Odell Beckham type. Obviously, that shows how high I am on him. So I think that's a great pick. I like what they're doing with the Baylor connection with Corey Coleman, Josh Gordon, and RG3. If Josh Gordon can stop smoking and doing every drug possible, we'll see what happens with that. But I don't like Emmanuel Ogbah very much. He doesn't have much of a motor. He never really, I don't know. He should have been a lot better than he was. So I'm not high on that pick. Carl Nassib, they drafted in the third round. This guy literally had 1 year where he was even slightly above average. And the rest of the years he was like a bench warmer more or less. So I don't understand that one at that point. Cody Kessler in the third round. You have two quarterbacks that are already perennial backups for the most part, and now you're going to add a third guy. That doesn't make a lot of sense. And then
they have three backup quarterbacks on their roster now.
Yeah, and all they ever did was draft wide receivers that I never heard of for the later rounds. Ricardo Luis out of Auburn's all right, but like I don't know. They got a tight end out of Princeton who's supposed to play wide receiver. I don't know how that works out. They got a wide receiver from UCLA. Another wide receiver from Colorado State. Like I know they don't have any wide receivers, but maybe you should have picked some good ones early on besides just Corey Coleman.
Well, yeah, they're rolling with Coleman and then Andrew Hawkins and Brian Hartline this year because they don't even have Travis Benjamin anymore.
Right. So there's not a lot there.
No, there's definitely not a lot there. I like Nassib more than you do, but other than that, I pretty much agree with you on the Browns draft. I think you factor into the Browns draft all the picks they got for next year, though.
Yeah.
Like, I think you factor that in somewhat. If you do, then their grade gets better. But in terms of what they did this year, I don't love it either.
To have 15 picks and to have two guys that I consider hits, it's not good.
Yeah, I like the Coleman pick. But
there was so much talent. Yeah, I do too. But there's no one that I think, besides Coleman, that's going to be plugged in immediately and be a big-time starter or even just a starter. With so much depth in this draft, I don't know how that doesn't happen, but they missed a lot, I think.
Yeah.
So we'll stop bashing the Browns like everyone else always does, and we'll go to something we've been promising for a while with AFC Division winners. So let's start in the AFC East, where I hate every team there, but we have to start there anyways because they usually have a team that makes the Super Bowl. So AFC East, I have the Patriots. What a surprise. I know Tom Brady's going to miss the first four. We talked about this before, but they're going to go 2-1 or 2-2 or 3-1. Then he'll probably come back and win the rest of them. So I don't see any problems there.
Yeah, I don't think we need to get too deep into the East. I think
you got the same thing, right?
Yeah, I have the Patriots as well. This would be the year when the other teams have a chance, but I really don't think any of the other teams in the division are good.
Yeah,
I think they have a lot of talent, but if they can't figure out who's playing quarterback, then it doesn't matter. And I don't think they're good enough to beat the Patriots out anyway.
Yeah, I think the other three teams got better, that being the Bills, Jets, and Dolphins, but not infinitely better where they can surpass the Patriots. And they also all have question marks that I don't know I don't know. I mean, they should be better than they were, but I don't think this is the year for them because the Patriots are the Patriots, and I don't think you can ever pick against them.
Yeah, I'll believe they're done when I see they're done.
Yeah, even when they start out, well, they were like 1-2 last year, and everyone's like, "Oh, this is over," and then they dominated. So.
Yeah.
So then we'll go to the North, which has been dominated by the Bengals in the recent past, but I like the Steelers.
Yeah, I like the Steelers this year too. Obviously, no Martavis Bryant, which hurts, and they have had some problems on defense, but that's even without Martavis Bryant, it's like the most explosive offense, arguably in the league. Dan Roethlisberger still got it. They have Antonio Brown, who's possibly the best receiver in the league, depending on who you talk to. Now Kelsey's not in the league anymore. And I think they made some kind of high-risk picks in the secondary in the draft, but you certainly can't say they didn't address it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they needed, and they went and got it.
Yeah, and and they won the division last year, even with that poor of a secondary. So I think they did a good job addressing their needs, and I think that they'll be a solid team this year. I would watch out for the Ravens, though, because they were super unlucky last year with all their injuries, and they had a really good draft, and they should have some guys back this year. So I think they're going to be good again.
Yeah, and also one thing we didn't mention, yes, they lose Martavis Bryant, but they also get the best running back in the NFL healthy and back again, so that's only going to help their cause.
Right.
And as you said, the Ravens, I just have to mention this because I think it's really funny, but Steve Smith, who's going to be coming back to play for the Ravens this year, tore his Achilles last year, and I think NFL Network tweeted out like the top 5 players over 35 or whatever, and Steve Smith was number 5 and Tony Romo was number 4, and Steve Smith responded to that tweet by saying, "Thanks for the recognition, but Tony Romo shouldn't be ahead of me in anything." So I just wanted to mention that to this Cowboy fan that we have on the other line here.
Yeah, Steve Smith always throwing shade.
So then we're going to start disagreeing here. We're going to go to the AFC South. I'm picking the Jaguars this year, which is a surprise to probably some people. I think Blake Bortles finally takes the step to lead this team. I like their receivers a lot with Robinson and Hearns. TJ Yeldon was very good last year. Denard Robinson's still there. And their defense just got astronomically better with Jalen Ramsey, Miles Jack, Yannick Ngakoue, Prince Mukamara's there, Tyshawn Gibson's there. Their secondary turned into a extremely strong suit after being a thing of need, so I like them a lot this year.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree that strongly with the Jaguars. Just in my mind right now, I have Houston and Jacksonville both as kind of 9-7 type teams. So I could see Colts winning that division also. Like, a lot of things they can have. I'm going to go with Houston winning the division. They won it last year, and they're worse in no way than they were last year. Like, you can argue about whether Brock Osweiler is going to be good or not. I'm not positive I believe in him, but I believe in him to be better than Brian Hoyer. I think that's fair.
Yeah, definitely.
So, they have a defense that is like, it's like an up and down type defense. They have some really good players, obviously J.J. Watt in the league, and they have some other solid guys too, some holes for sure. But I like their offensive line better than Jacksonville's. I like Lamar Miller, who they got in free agency. So, and went out in the draft and certainly got Brock Osweiler some weapons. I don't love Will Fuller, but he can certainly take the ball off the defense, and he's a good fit for Brock Osweiler's big arm. So, yeah, I mean, I think they did a lot to help out their new quarterback, and I think that'll pay off. They'll make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that division's going to be pretty close again. I don't think the Titans did enough to put their name into the hat, but I think the Jags, Texans, and Colts will all have a chance to compete for the title there. And I think that's going to be the same with the AFC West, where I have the Raiders. Yes, Oakland, I picked the Raiders to go to the playoffs. I think Derek Carr, just like Blake Bortles, is about to take a step forward. Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree are great receivers. Again, another team that got way better defensively through the draft. They did all the right things. Khalil Mack is an absolute beast, as everyone knows. So I think this is the year that Oakland breaks the streak of not being in the playoffs.
Yeah, I have Oakland in the playoffs too. I have them as a wild card team. I agree with everything you've said. I think you could argue their offensive line is one of the 5 best in the league now. They've done a lot to improve the offensive line. With signing Clutchy Assembly this offseason. So I do like what the Raiders have done. I'm going to pick Kansas City to win the division this year. Obviously, they're going to be without Justin Houston for a while with his injury, so that's a concern. But I just like their roster up and down. Like, they're a very strong team last year. They're not necessarily the type of team that's built to win in the playoffs, because Alex Smith is more of a game manager type, but he's really good at what he does. And has been better than in years past. Jeremy Maclin now there. You got the story Eric Berry had last year. So, I pick Kansas City to win the division. I'd love to pick Denver because their defense is great, but
not with Mark Sanchez.
Yeah, and I'm not nearly as high on Paxton Lynch as other people are. So, like, I don't know. I guess whichever one's the starter, I'm not that confident in the Broncos quarterback situation.
Yeah, but I mean, I think we can both agree that there's probably going to be some new faces in the playoffs this year, which will be good to see for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that'll wrap up our football discussion for probably a good amount of time now. We'll get back into it later in the summer, before the first couple weeks probably. So we're going to move to a hot topic, which is the NBA playoffs. And as you know, the Warriors are facing off against the Trailblazers. The Warriors took game one pretty handily, thanks in part to 37 from Klay Thompson and Draymond's triple-double. So, Jonah, I ask you the question. Steph Curry is supposed to be out for 2 weeks. 2 weeks will come up in around game 3, which is this Saturday. Would you bring back Steph Curry at that time, regardless of the standings with the series?
If it was me running the team, I would, under no circumstances, bring him back before the conference finals. Well, not under no circumstances. If they were facing elimination against Portland...
If it's like 3-2 or 3-3, I think you would.
Yeah, if the Blazers take 3 games, that's the only way I put Curry into the series at all. Like, I make sure he's rested for the Spurs. And I don't want to totally dismiss...
No, you can dismiss them.
It was a pretty good indication of where that series is probably going.
Yes, they can be dismissed. They're done.
Yeah, so I want him 110% for the Spurs, and I'm not putting him in until the Blazers win 3, and I doubt that'll happen.
Yeah, so if I'm the Warriors, I'm putting everything I have in Game 2 to try to get this series up to 2-0. And even if you lose Game 3, you lose Game 3. But leave Curry on the bench. Say it's 2-1 Game 3. Maybe you can sneak out Game 4 and it's 3-1. But worst case scenario, it's 2-2 and you're going back home. Just win the games at home. Try to get to 3-2. Maybe you can bring Steph back for Game 6 just to get him back in the flow to get ready for the Spurs. Because I don't want to rush him back, and I also don't even want to bring him back if he thinks he's 100%, because I think he needs to think that he's 110% to come back. But I also don't want to bring him into Game 1 against the Spurs, where he hasn't seen game action in like a month almost, and just be ice cold, because that could be a recipe for disaster against them. So I want to give him a little bit of time, but I also don't want to push him at all, and I think he needs to take as long as possible to get back. Because, yes, they want to win the championship, but you're talking about someone who could potentially be one of the best players we've seen ever, and you don't want to risk his career because you need to win Game 5 at home or something.
Right, and yeah, I don't think they're going to really have that much trouble overall with Portland. I mean, I don't like Portland a lot, but they definitely overshoot the track, even without them. Portland is the type of team they've had problems with because they have 2, like, quick, streaky guards who just like a player type that the Warriors sometimes have a hard time guarding. As you saw when they faced John Wall in Washington, and I will forever be jealous if you being at that game. But I don't anticipate them having a huge problem with the Blazers. I don't think they're going to have any need to bring him back before the conference finals, and so there's really no reason to rush him back because if you want to go down like best team in history, which they would be if they won the title, I think.
Yeah, I wouldn't hesitate to say that. Also,
then,
if you, go ahead.
Curry out until you absolutely have to put him in. Like if it's in Game 7, otherwise you're waiting.
Yeah, and also, if you watch the game, C.J. McCollum was more or less a non-factor, and really Damian Lillard didn't get going until the fourth quarter. So if you just play that D that they were playing, and Draymond brings the intensity he brought, which he always does, and Klay makes 7 threes again because he just did 3 times in a row, I really don't see a problem. I like Portland a lot too, but they're ahead of schedule, and nobody expected this anyways. So I really don't think the Warriors have to stress out. But if they keep playing the way they are, they could even sweep them.
Yeah, I would not be surprised at all to see them sweep. I mean, I thought they were going to sweep the Rockets. They lost that one game, which is stupid. The Rockets are bad. They didn't deserve to be there.
Anyone who can lose by 40 without Steph Curry on the court in an elimination game doesn't deserve to even be talked about.
Yeah, that was the disgrace of the team. They were like, look, you cost us one day of our vacations with that one win, James Harden. We're out of here now.
Yeah, that was pathetic. But, yeah, I don't rush Steph Curry back. I honestly, even if they're down 2-1, if they lose these next 2 games, I still don't rush them back. I don't understand.
I don't bring him back unless the Blazers win 3 games. That's the only way I bring him back.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Wait till he's 110%, please, and I think they will. I think Steve Kerr is so smart and knows that there's a bigger picture here. Their management's pretty solid, so I don't really see this being a problem, other than Steph just trying to will them back. But I do want him to get a little bit of game action under his belt before he sees the Spurs.
Yeah, right. That'd be ideal. But you also don't want to rush him back, so it's a tough balance.
Right. But the good news is that he looks to be okay. He's getting treatment, they said 3 times a day, and there's no major problems other than just a minor knee sprain. So hopefully we see the old Steph pretty soon. So with that brings us to the next question, which we touched on a little bit just now, but Jonah, do you think anyone, this is including the Warriors, with or without Curry, can stop the Spurs from what we just saw with that debacle of the Thunder?
Yeah, well, the other night I was watching hockey, and then our friend Dave Snyder texted me, and he said, go turn on the Spurs game. I'm like, why? Is it close? He's like, no, turn on the Spurs game. I looked, I'm like, oh my god, this is like a total destruction. And, I mean, I think we expected the Spurs to beat Oklahoma City. I don't know if we expected it to be like this, but like the Spurs have quietly had one of the best seasons ever.
Yeah,
and,
easily.
Like, right, I mean, there's been all the fuss about the Warriors, and rightly so, but like, the Spurs have also been like otherworldly basketball team. And a lot of their losses are due to the classic, like, Popovich resting guys.
Yeah, because they rest half their team, and even then, sometimes they still win, so like it doesn't even have that big of an effect.
Right, I mean, I do think the Warriors are a better team than the Spurs at full strength, but like, these are like 2 of the best single season teams that we've seen in like a really long time.
Yeah.
And I think that the Warriors certainly can stop them if Curry is available, and even if he's like 90%, they can win, because like even that terrible game he had in San Antonio when the Spurs won.
Yeah, they still were down a couple and had a chance.
Right, they were still close, even with their best player like having a horrible game. So that's like a preview of what you could see in the conference finals, even if Curry is bad. So like that's going to be a good series regardless. I think if Curry is 100%, I think the Warriors will win that series. But I think the Warriors are the only team in either conference that has any chance of beating the Spurs.
Yeah, so, I mean, the Spurs walked through the Grizzlies, which we expected. The Grizzlies put up a little bit more fight than even I thought, but that's still a sweep. Relatively easy for the Spurs. And then they get to OKC, and it looked like Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook should have been on a JV team. I mean, the Thunder did not belong in that game for more than 10 seconds. That was from the opening tip, that was over. And that's kind of scary to think that. I mean, I remember looking at the score one time, and it was 100-65, and we were still in the third quarter. And this is a team that you're talking about with OKC that has 2 of the best players in the world. There's endless ability, endless talent, and they shouldn't even have been on the same court. So the Spurs are incredible. I love the signing of LaMarcus Aldridge, because here we're talking about probably last year or even 2 years ago how the Spurs are done. Parker, Duncan, Ginobili all going to retire. They got nothing left. Then out of the blue, Kawhi Leonard becomes one of the. I think he's probably the third best player in the NBA. And then you sign LaMarcus Aldridge, who's young, going to develop with Kawhi Leonard, scoring 30 points a night in the playoffs. I mean, you have two centerpieces here of a team that we thought was going to be done, who are going to dominate the league together for probably at least 5 more years.
Yeah, the Spurs keep finding a way. The Spurs have been good every year, like, for our entire lives.
Yeah, I've never seen a time where the Spurs weren't in the playoffs and weren't competing.
Right, since David Robinson, they've been, which is, before our time. So, yeah, I mean, the Spurs are going to Spurs. This is what they do. They're always good. They always find a way. Popovich, I firmly believe, is the best coach in the league. Even if other guys might win, coach. But he's he turned Boris D out into the best experience.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talent there. He's a great coach, but I think seeing the Warriors, Spurs in the Western Conference Finals with a completely healthy both rosters would probably be the most entertaining basketball anyone could ask for in a really long time. If the Warriors weren't the Warriors this year, people would be talking about the Spurs all year long trying to break Jordan's record with the Bulls. So we had 2 teams this year that were 2 of the best teams in the history of basketball, and hopefully they get to face off against each other in the Western Conference Finals, even though I know Thunder and Portland fans don't want to hear that. But I think they should want to hear that because it's going to be a lot of fun. And I do think that the Warriors can stop the Spurs. But from what I've seen in the last 5 games in the playoffs from the Spurs, I'd be pretty cautious if I was the Warriors with my game plan and how I take on the Spurs.
Yeah, there's just so much to like with the Spurs. And this, I think that is so much like with the Warriors, too. That's why that playoff series would be absolutely incredible. But yeah, I think just as a basketball fan, I'm a Knicks fan. I obviously have no interest in these playoffs, fan-wise, and I haven't forever. So I think that as a basketball fan, you're rooting for that series to happen, and you're rooting for it to go 7 games, so you can just watch incredible basketball because the Western Conference Finals will be better than the finals.
Yes, definitely. But I do like how the Cavs are playing right now, so hopefully they keep that up if they make to the finals. But they got a nice team in their way, I hope, if we can get through Toronto, which will bring us to the Miami Heat. And this is also a nice bridge between the Thunder and the Heat because hopefully KD decides to go to Miami in the offseason. We'll talk about that later. But do you think...
the Knicks, man,
Yeah, okay. I think he goes to Brooklyn before he goes to the Knicks. So,
that hurts, man.
So, this is the last segment of today, but we're going to talk about whether or not the Heat are a legitimate threat. I know we've hit on a little bit, but now that we're in the second round and we've seen what we've seen from the Heat so far, Jonah, what do you think?
I think that they are better than the Raptors. I think that we'll see them against the Cavs in the conference finals. I wasn't that impressed with the way the Raptors played in the first round. I mean, the Pacers are always tougher than they appear to be. So, I'm not going to say, they almost lost to the Pacers. The Pacers are a good team, so. But I wasn't that impressed with the Raptors. I think the Heat will probably beat them. The Heat are, obviously, they completely took apart Charlotte in Game 7. And Charlotte's a decent team. But I really don't think they touch the Cavs and I think probably the Hawks are better than they are too, just eye test wise.
Yeah, so
that's just how I feel about it. I mean, I don't know if what we saw from Wade is a real thing. If he's gonna beat Dwayne Wade again, then all bets are off.
Yeah, see, I kind of wish Game 7 against the Hornets was closer because I want to see if Wade could put back-to-back performances together, which he didn't have to do. I mean, he didn't even play the majority of the second half, and he still had, I think, 12 points, maybe 16, somewhere around there in the teens. But, I would like to have seen him put 2 games back-to-back, which he really never did, or even, he needed to early on, but he killed it in Game 6. He was the sole reason they won Game 6. And Game 7, I would like to see the same thing. But so Miami's kind of like the Washington Capitals, and believe it or not, I like both teams. But they, like, rarely show their full potential and rarely play as hard as they should play. Especially in moments like this where you're in the playoffs. Like, you should be going full 110% every game, every minute. And both teams don't do that often. Like, there was no reason the Heat should have lost 3 straight games to the Hornets. And finally they stepped up. Goran Dragic played huge in Game 7. Just took it to Kemba Walker. So if they play like that, if they play like they played in Game 7, they should get by the Raptors. I think they can win. The Cavs have really struggled with Miami. And I think LeBron always kind of tries to one-up Dwayne Wade. And it doesn't work because Wade's pretty clutch and pretty good. But I still think the Cavs will get through them.
Yeah, I think the Cavs are certainly the definitive favorites in the East. Still, I like the Hawks, and I think that's going to be a really good series. Like, the couple of times I saw the Cavs play the Hawks this year, it was always a good game. And so I think that would be a good series. I'm not sure what to think about Miami. Like,
yeah, they're a hard team to figure out. They really are.
I feel like the sum of their parts should be better than they are.
100%. I think every time
a comparison to make to the Capitals, but
yeah, every time the Heat play, they'll be up by like 20, and I'll text Jonah and be like, "Are you watching the game?" And he'll say yes or no. I'll say, "Okay, we're up 20, we're up 25." And he'll be like, "Wow, good win." And I'll be like, "Nope." We always blow these leads. We've never once withstood this rush that they're about to get. So, I don't know. They can dominate 24 minutes of a game. They can dominate 36 minutes of a game. I've rarely seen them put a full game together like they did in Game 7 against Charlotte, which I think they would need to do probably 4 times in a row. Not 4 times in a row. 4 times out of 7 to beat the Cavs. And I really haven't seen that in a long time from them. And I also don't know what to think about Wade's legs at this point in the playoffs. So I think they're a legit team. They're very good. Luol Deng is playing out of his ever-loving mind right now. But they could really use Chris Bosh. They could really use a younger core. So, yes, I think they're legit, but no, I don't think they can make it to the finals.
I agree with that. I think they can make it to the conference finals. I think teams 2 through 6 in the Eastern Conference, meaning Toronto, Miami, Atlanta, Boston, and Charlotte, were all kind of similar quality teams. I think the Pacers kind of proved themselves in that category too. I think any of them could be any other one. I think a lot of people are going to have Miami as the favorites because Toronto has a history of, underachieving and didn't look that good against the Pacers. I think that's going to be a really good series. I think Miami will ultimately win it, but I don't really give them that much of a shot against the Cavs.
Yeah, I think we're set for pretty solid finishes to both conferences. I think there's going to be good series and good games here and there. I could see the East going I could see both these series going 6 and 7 at least, and then seeing the conference finals go 6 or 7 as well. And we all know the Spurs and Warriors were praying for 7 games there if we ever get that. So I think we're set for a solid finish and a good May. But yeah, I don't know. Basketball's in a good spot, if I had to say.
Yeah, I fully agree.
So that's the end of our little basketball talk. We have a big game tonight, Jonah, with the Penguins taking on my Washington Capitals. 1-1 in the series. We're playing in Pittsburgh tonight. The Capitals have looked like atrocious garbage for the first 2 games. Nothing new in the playoffs. Somehow got 1 win. Almost could have gotten a second, which I'm stunned about. But they need to turn it up. So what do you think? Are we going to get this one tonight or no?
I don't know. I don't see it.
Great.
Maybe too, but, my powers of prediction are not honestly that good. So
I was actually hoping you picked the Penguins so we can get the little kiss of death going on, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, right. Exactly. Maybe I'm just reversed.
All right. So that's the show for this week. Thanks for listening. Next week we honestly don't know what we're going to talk about yet, but it's going to be good. So tune in.